section of the Fourth International, the ISO, who's also doing this Congress. And I'm also from there. I was delegate at the World Congress, where the Ökosozialistische Manifesto was finalized and it was voted on. And right now I'm in the International Committee, which is the leadership of the Fourth International between the World Congresses. I work at the Telekom. I'm from Darmstadt, and yeah, that's about it. We are talking about the Manifest für eine ökosozialistische Revolution, which is translated in many languages, also in German. You can get this at the bookstore for €4, or you can get the more prestige English one for €5. But it's yeah, we will have some introduction from our side, and then we can have the discussion and then a summary at the end from us.
Cool. Yeah, I'm Maral. I work in the Political Education Center of the Fourth International, which is based in Amsterdam. For the last 12 years, we organize schools and seminars of the Fourth International in the Institute. And after the session, when we have time, if you have time in the end, I'll talk a little bit more about the institute that we have in Amsterdam. I am a historian, a social historian. I did work on oil workers in Iran. And I am also a member of the International Committee of the Fourth International. And I'm also a bureau member since 2018. Well, some of you have read the manifesto. It looks pretty thin, but it is very dense. So we're not really going to go and do a summary of it. We both will focus on different parts of it. Some of them will overlap, but we'll try to kind of, highlight some issues and topics that we do find important and that are underlined also in the manifesto. Do I speak too fast? Is that okay? Good. And I think that's also easy to have an English workshop with people who are not native English speakers, because I'm not a native English speaker. It's my third language, Persian, Turkish, and now English. So I think that would be easier anyways. I will first start with talking a little bit about the making of the Eco-Socialist Manifesto itself, because it's not written here, but it's, let me also start the time. We'll try not to take too long, maybe 15 to 20 minutes at most each, and then we'll try to discuss together. So, as Ole said, well, yes, this was officially finalized and voted in the last World Congress in 2025, but it was a process of 3 years to write and bring this last version of the manifesto. And that's pretty important, because when we're talking about manifestos, and especially if you think of the Fourth International's documents, programmatic manifestos, starting from the 38, right, the transitional program written by Trotsky himself, and later the 93 manifesto, mostly written by Mandel himself, Ernest Mandel himself. This is totally different, because this was written by an ecology commission of the Fourth International, which was coordinated by Danietta Muro. And there have been comrades from all around the world in this commission, because nowadays Fourth International's biggest section is Philippines, for example. There were comrades from Philippines, there were comrades from Morocco, there were comrades from Switzerland. And they did write this, but they also wrote every year, so for the last 3 years, to the International Committee to discuss it. And there were amendments from the Feminist Commission, there were amendments from the LGBTQI Commission. So it was really a collective process, and that is kind of the logic of of the text. It also brings, that there have been, like it is not a very great piece of literature or very, like it could have been better if the process continued. But at some point you have to kind of finalize and go forward. We have been calling ourselves eco-socialists for a long time. Like when I first became a member like 16 years ago, I remember that eco-socialist, the term eco-socialist was around. Our schools in Amsterdam, since I worked there since from 2014, they have been called eco-socialist schools. But I doubt that we really knew what that all of us knew what we really meant by eco-socialist at that time. It was first mentioned in 2003 in our documents, the word eco-socialist, and then in 2018 Congress we adopted it as our orientation. And when you look at the history of the writings of Trotsky, writings of Mandel, you can see that it was not that they were very much the pioneers of the ecology issue compared even to their peers of the same time. So it is interesting to see that in the last 30 years there have been quite a lot of development in the thought of the Fourth International in this orientation from an organization which kind of did not really prioritize the ecology issue compared to the other groups, to an organization, to a socialist organization, the first socialist organization kind of, that has called itself eco-socialist officially. So that is part of it. That is the history of it that I wanted to share with you. Well, the title of it is, of course, what is it? A break with the capitalist growth, but also like in line with this history that I kind of told you a little bit, it is also not just a break with the capitalist growth, but also with the mostly like the 20th century movement, workers' movements that were taking progress as as a way forward to solve the problem. So even from the Communist Manifesto, the idea that if we produce more, the belief in technology that will solve a lot of issues about underdevelopment and all that. So it is also a break from that, but sometimes when we look back, it's also about like the issues about racism or feminism. There are a lot of works to try to see whether like Marx was feminist or Marx was ecologist, or Trotsky was feminist or ecologist or other things. There have been a lot of books lately written about Marx and ecology. So the idea is not necessarily to say that yes they were and that they wrote about it or others, but it's not a black and white thing. We have to think those people, we have to take them as the products of their times, but also not to overlook the concerns that they had at that time too. I mean, Marx was not totally oblivious to the idea of ecology. The discussion about taking, the human and the human and the environment, and this environment question, like what he calls as a metabolism, for example. The discussion about alienation. All of them are a part of we are a continuation of that writings as well. I mean, he wrote about soil erosion, about deforestation, and other topics too. So it is kind of a break with the idea that the trust of progress, the trust of technology, and as if it is mostly it's not the production process, but it is it's the who owns the means of the production issue. But what was I saying? Yeah. So it is not totally like it is a continuation, but also a break with the idea that we are not that hopeful anymore of the technological change. So that will come later when we talk about degrowth issue, because so it is also, I mean that was that is also a break with that kind of thought, but as the title says itself, it's the break with capitalist growth. So And when we talk about, and these discussions in the Fourth International, when I'm talking about like these 3 years discussions, one of the main topics or like main kind of disagreements that we had was this underlining of degrowth, because we are very clear in this manifesto that we are for degrowth. But of course, before us, there have been other kind of movements that were discussing about degrowth. And we tried to make our kind of difference with those groups for a long time too. Because like when we discussed about degrowth, comrades, especially from the Global South, were saying that like, well, this is not a demand that we could, discuss among our comrades. So what are we going to say? Like that we have less? Like is that a political project to go for austerity? Or even the details that are written here, like having less meat production, production and consumption, other things. Are we going to be like propagating in working classes, in neighborhoods of Brazil that they should eat less meat because that is, what are they doing now, kind of. But the issue is that for us, degrowth is not a program. It is just a necessity, and it is like an awareness that we cannot continue to produce and consume as much as we did, especially in the global north. Until after this. So it is not, degrowth is not an alternative social project. It's not our slogan, and it's not our demand, and it is a constraint that we have to take into account when we are transitioning to a different society. And what we mean by that is that we have to have a global reduction of material production. But this is also not going to be kind of a linear thing, and we are not expecting it, to be the same way everywhere. And it is also not just a discussion about global north and the global south, because and Ole will speak a little bit more, and I mean that's why I skipped that part of like the importance or the urgency of the ecological crisis these days. And of course the global north, not just about like not only after the Industrial Revolution, but even before with the colonialism and plunder, but also later on with the productivism, is the main responsible part of this ecological crisis. But apart from that, there's also like a class divide in different countries as well. So in the global south too. So when we're kind of we in our project, we do expect that the global south would still continue, to use more energy to be able to meet the social demands of the people, the public goods, the basic necessities. Ole will speak about these things as well, about to have public transportation, to have better roads, to have better houses, better education, health services. So when we say degrowth, we don't say that like these should not happen and the energy and resources should not be used for that. Of course, this will continue, but there is also in the global south too, there has to be. So the main idea is that everybody, this is a collective project, it's a collective global project, but it is not the case that everybody will do the same thing in every kind of situation or every world. And that is also important. So it is, this is a program, it gives some examples, but it doesn't give kind of a line for every country or every specific location or other things. And that's generally what we do. We don't do it in the Fourth International anymore. Anyways, like there's not like one line for every situation. But it still gives kind of some lines for the global south, if you want to say it in general, that there will be also like a stopping the, for example, the conspicuous consumption of the parasitic elites of those countries, because even in a part, in the part of the global south, you can see private jets, you can see yachts, you can have you have all these big projects, mega projects that creates quite also, when there's a World Cup or all these things, we know who are building those global, these grand projects. So there should be, of course, like fight against those. There should be fights against the elites of those countries. There should be requests and demands for reparations. There should be solidarity ties between, international solidarity between the global south and the global north. One of the examples that is very concrete is, for example, the demand for how do you call it? Stopping the patents on patents of the technological innovations, for example, that they would make it easier for the global south to be able to reach the technologies without using much more energy. So this is a global project in that sense, but it's kind of accepts and acknowledges the differences, and the main things are like the main principles is also that we have to have we have to provide spaces for deliberation, for discussion. These processes will not going to be top down. This is not the idea. The self-emancipation, collective work, these are not as our kind of end goals, but these are the methods that we hope to and we are employing, and that's why I also said how the Eco-Socialist Manifesto was written. These are the methods that we would like to employ while reaching our goals. So, in fact, one of the main, more theoretical parts of the manifesto is that, because I spoke about degrowth is not the social project, it's not our social project. What is our social project? Our social project is to have a life, to build a society that is not based on the idea of having things, but based on being. And that might sound very philosophical in a sense, but it's not, because it is quite like a continuation also of a classical Marxist idea of, reducing the work time. That was like the main struggle of of the workers' movement, and we are continuing it and trying to say that we would, we are not for a life that is only because capitalism, as we know, is a system that is based only to produce profit and not use values. And the society that we would like to live in is a society that is more focused on the use values, on what a good life is, what are the priorities of a good life is. And that is, what is the necessities? What are the necessities of humans? But these are not that easy issues. You have to discuss it with people, and also, if you take into account this ecological crisis, what is a good life in a planet with the limited resources? Because now we are in that situation that we have to have those discussions, we have to prioritize some things. And that's why we're saying that, we're against of course, armament industry, an easy industry to say that, okay, we don't want arms, but like cars, what don't we want? Or what, this is a huge discussion and has to be done in different kind of levels and spaces. And we also want to have more free time, not just, of course, it's a very important thing of to be just human and live and do arts, do other things, but also all these processes need time as well. Deliberation, thinking together, discussing at every level needs time. So we would like to free time to be able to construct a society all together. And the processes until now has been marginalizing. When you think about the people who are mostly affected by this ecological crisis are generally the people who are not included in the discussion processes as well. So, I remember when at some point when this manifesto was discussed, the term intersectionality, some comrades wanted to think that, you know, maybe it's too academic and we should not be using it. I think by now it is used much more widely. I don't know how it is in Germany, but I mean, manifesto is underlining the intersectionality in that sense as well, because it talks about care work, you know, socialization of care work, which is a very important topic. I'm not going to go into detail of it, but you can't talk about care work or socialization of care work without talking about patriarchy or feminism or, you know, racialized labor, who is doing what kind of work, but also, yeah, so to create the spaces for all these people's experiences to be included is also a very fundamental part of the manifesto. And there's also, like, you know, this discussion, one thing that I think if we continue to discuss, which I was telling to Ole just before this workshop, because we both find some mistakes and other things in the manifesto, and we will, because it's a, you know, it's a working document in that sense. It underlines that capitalism needs racism and patriarchy to function. That is not really, I think, what most of us think in the Fourth International, that there's a necessity of a, you know, a causation that between capitalism could have functioned without racism as well, probably, or without feminism, or we don't know. We cannot necessarily say that it needs it, but we know that, you know, a history of capitalism shows us that there has been no era of capitalism that it was not racist, that it was not sexist. So it might not be a causation, but we know that capitalism has not functioned without racism or sexism. So, and the manifesto underlines that even that thing is like, shows that these are not necessarily like parallel fights or parallel causes: ecology, class issue, feminism, racialization issue, racism. And they have to be united, and there should be like a convergence of struggles to be able to get out of this this crisis. I'm going to end. It's already becoming 20 minutes. The time passes quickly, but yeah, maybe just ending with that thing that, you know, this idea of progress, and so, you know, like Marx saying that revolutions are the locomotives of history, and here we come back again to, you know, Walter Benjamin, which is very dear for a lot of us in the Fourth International, that maybe it's not the revolutions are not the locomotive, but it is the emergency brake, as he says, and now is the time of the emergency brake, and that is a revolutionary act to stop this progressive locomotive that is going into, in fact, a tragedy rather than progress. So I think I'm going to end up here, and we'll continue discussing after your contribution.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So, yeah, I wanted to focus on two aspects of the Ökosozialistische Manifesto. First of all, why ecosocialism? Why now a manifesto? Well, most of us have heard about the ecological crises, but the ecological crisis is something that is ongoing for more than 70 years. More than that, if you are real, but we know for a fact since 70 years that it's going to be devastating and continue to be harmful. And right now we have the situation that the AMOC, the Atlantic Marinal Oceanical Circulation, is slowing down. And we have the issue that we have the hottest since I'm young. Every now and then I hear this was the hottest year in the last century, forever, and so on. And it continued this way, and now we're hearing that El Nino is going to hit very hard. So we are from the part where we could have said there is an ecological crisis coming. We are now in the part of we are at the beginning, at the start of the ecological crisis. And we all talk much about CO2 reduction and CO2 and etc. What many people forget about CO2 is it takes 10 to 15 years for the CO2 I'm producing now to get into the higher parts of the atmosphere, and it stays there 60 to 100 years. So what we are producing now will have an effect the next 70 to 120 years, roundabout. Methane is quicker and more ugly and so on and so forth, I know, but CO2 is a big part, and the issue is we are talking about reduction of CO2 emissions since at least the 80s of the last century. But the only thing that's reduced right now, until now, is the rate in which we rise the CO2 production. But CO2 production is still rising, still on the rise. That's not good. And we had some good news last year, or this year, that the UN said, okay, the worst case scenario of 7.5 degrees, that's not realistic. Yeah, wow, we are only on the road to 4 degrees above pre-industrial time. So it's urgent, it's catastrophic, it hurts people, it kills people. And people flee because of ecological catastrophes. And therefore, the capitalist North does create fortresses. It's Frontex, it's the wall between Mexico and the US, and so on and so forth. To stop this migration, we are in charge of, not we, but the North is in charge of, is responsible for. And one very important issue is that the climate catastrophe, the climate pollution is a class issue. So I have some numbers. The richest 1% emits nearly twice as much CO2 as the poorest 50%. So if we can reduce the CO2 production, we can reduce the pollution and so on, if we start tackling the richest and the biggest companies. The ecological crisis is part of the capitalist society, is part of the capitalist production. And that's also the reason why those who were responsible for the climate denial propaganda since the 70s or 60s was the fossil fuel industry. They have an interest in letting the catastrophe grow. They have an interest in securing their profits because their profits are more important than the lives of the humans. And therefore we have to get rid of the capitalism, of the capitalist society, and to tackle this ecological crisis. One part where we have, you said we don't have a general line from and forth. I disagree. We have
not everything.
No, we have one general line in the forth, and this is the self-organization and democracy. So we have two. The key factors to tackle all political issues within the society, and these issues are entangled, like Maral also mentioned, is to get to a self-organization, to get to a democratic discussion about how to move forward. The so-called green capitalism will not solve anything. If you have a green tax, it will affect the poorest the most, because they don't have the means. So if you have the money, you can afford to buy your CO2 and will continue to pollute the world. So that can't be the solution. Therefore, we have to overcome this system to get to a society where it's possible to live. And the most common necessities for living, like housing, food, drinkable water, they are not guaranteed in capitalism. They can only be guaranteed if the means of production and the means of the natural resources are under control of the people. So, what does it mean for the how to go forward? Most of the struggles we know now, we see, we are within feminism, anti-racism, struggle against genocide, struggle against war, and so on, so struggle at the workplace for a better working condition. They are all interlinked within the capitalist system. They are all intertwined. They all work together. We have we as eco-socialists has to put our international perspective and our eco-socialist perspective within these fights, bring them together. That's the way we can move forward. And it will be, in the beginning, it will be very, very concrete, very simple things like the cities are heating. There are places, I live in Darmstadt, there are places with no trees, with no shadow. So when the summer is at its highest point, you can't go on this place because in the noon, because it's too hot. So we have to work for cool places, for water, and so on and so forth. And we have to fight the extractivism and the capitalist society to get to our society. And I think I forgot half of what I would say, but I'm done for now. Yeah.
Should I add a few other things that I forgot?
Please.
I was just looking because I was like,
please.
Things that, and you use 10 minutes, so I can use your 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But there are a couple of things that I think we should not, I should not miss to say. I think I didn't. Is one of those concrete things that the manifesto says, that we should decentralize as much as possible and coordinate as much as necessary. I think that is a very important principle. It means that they use the term subsidiarity, but it's not that important, and it's also used by EU and other groups, but we don't mean the same thing. That's what they mean. But if an issue can be solved with the smallest amount of people who are affected by them, that people who are affected by that issue, then it should first be solved by them. So that is kind of the main principle. Decentralize as much as possible and coordinate as much as necessary, not right.
Sorry, the second?
Coordinate as much as necessary. And also this coordination is, you know, to bring cooperation and not competition, which is how it works today in the capitalist system. So that is an important thing to say. And the other thing is, like, of course we are not the only ones who are, you know, thinking that we should change our, for example, our life. Like people living in the global north, we say we should use less, you know. In this manifesto it also talks about even like recycling and reusing and, you know, all these kind of everyday life experiences that we could change. But we don't look at this like in this kind of, we don't think of like creating, how can you say, like lifestyle communism, if you can say, I don't know. Like we don't think that we just individually by changing your lifestyle it can, you know, necessarily change a society. But we also don't look down on them, because it is important, it's a part of the struggle. So like this discussions about being vegan or I don't know, like doing this or that, we don't, you know, we don't think that this has to be the way, you know, this is the solution to solve everything, because it is not the choice for a lot of also people as well. Like, and it is also, as I said, in the political cultures, it is, you know, in the global south, it would be a different discussion, because people cannot afford. I mean, they are vegan because of the necessities. It is not a political project for people, for example. But I think it's important to discuss, like, and the manifesto itself does that. It says, like, all these things are good practices, we should combine all of them, and also, you know, like, collective canteens, the things that we can do today, even living groups, strike committees, all these things that are kind of possible in this society today are kind of places of experimentation, and we learn from that, you know, like to discuss in these places. They can fail, you know, there are a lot of squats in Netherlands that I'm coming from. There are kind of university occupations and everything, but we do look at these things as things that gives us experience and also empowers us. Because that's also something in the manifesto. It says that even in terms of like winning people and, you know, popularizing these arguments, you can't always only do it with words and with good theory, but people need also partial victories and little, you know, like winning and seeing that you can keep a social center together. And we will fail in a lot of instances probably, but we will learn from them, and that is, you know, what is underlined in the manifesto, which I find also very important. Yeah, these were the two things that I wanted to add.
Yeah, maybe I can add one thing I forgot, that is in the past 30, 40 years, parts of the ecological movement and of the mainstream discussion tried to put the ecological problems to the individual behavior. That's not the case. If you look at the numbers, well, it is the case, but not as we want to see it. If one multi-billionaire spends thousands of times of CO2 what an average person does, then it is kind of an individual issue, but nothing we can change when we don't change the system. So that's this shift. We have to shift back to see that the ecological crisis is a systemic issue. It's a part of the capitalist production, and we have to overthrow this kind of production to get rid of it and to move forward. Okay. That's it. Now, yes.
Comments, questions,
Please.
discussion.
Just a short individual note to that. So first of all, thank you very, very much. I just linked to what you said You have to have a feeling of some success or something on the stage. I'm not so deeply in the topic, so I have to just check again the name to not say it wrong. So we all know an example in Seattle with Sharma Savant, who was in the council of the town, an example. So things like that, when you can establish really on in situations which affects your daily life. You said about towns, how to make a climate climate adjustment or something like that. So I think these are the things. Of course, we cannot only reduce ourselves on such activities only. It's always needed to have a frame for the whole things, but things like this and how to create something like that. I mean, that's not easy to create some spots for some getting some success feeling. You know?
By the way, you also can speak German. Ole said he will translate it for me.
You will try to translate it for you, yes.
Ja, Ole, bitte übersetzen, im Englisch ist einfach viel besser. Und zwar, mich würde die Außenperspektive interessieren. Wie haben andere dieses Manifest wahrgenommen, also außerhalb der vierten? Was sind vielleicht auch die Hauptkritikpunkte und werden die diskutiert? Und wie geht man damit um? Genau, das würde mich interessieren.
Ich übersetze erst und dann. So he asked how was the manifesto received outside of the fort, and how does do we discuss it with others, and
What is the critique about?
Yeah, what is
Important, yeah.
Thank you.
I'm not in the ISO and I can a little bit answer. My question is, what is the specific thing of the ISO? I knew all of this. Ich teile das alles, but it's not specific for me, for you. And for our question, wenn ich hierher fahre, fragen mich die anderen, wieso fährst du zu den Trotzkisten? Andere wollen nicht mit euch kooperieren, weil Trotzkismus. Meine Frage ist, ich habe denen immer gesagt, ich habe davon gar nichts gemerkt, ich habe auch Trotzki gelesen. Was ist das Spezifische, was ihr noch von Trotzki habt und verteidigen wollt? Oder gibt es da gar nichts mehr?
Curious of this question.
She asked, so when she isn't in the ISO.
What's wrong with Trotsky? So no.
The question was, so she is not in the ISO, and when she comes here, comrades say, why do you go here? Why do you go to the Trotskyists? So, and the question is, what is the specific difference from our current to other currents, and what is how much Trotskyism is in our current?
Is there any other comments, contributions? Should we take more?
Should we take more, or should we first answer?
Well, there's three more, so maybe we
more.
answer these and then we take those three, right? Should we do
Yes,
that?
we
That's
should do
better.
that.
I'll say a few things and then you,
Okay.
let's do it all together. The very first comment, when you were saying, how are we going to do it? I've just thought about, the examples that are being done, and it is also, I think, said in the manifesto as well. For example, these disaster relief campaigns, not campaigns, but work that our comrades do in a lot of places, like when there is there's an earthquake, there's a flood. I remember when I first became a member of the court, there was comrades from Pakistan and Philippines, and in Philippines, there are so many natural disasters. They're no longer natural in that sense, but our comrades are mainly involved in disaster relief by making, because a lot of times these can be done very top down. by the state, the way they want to do it, creating quite unequal power relationship in terms of like as if in charity or as if like they're kind of giving something. But our comrades, and also not just the Fourth International, but the Fourth International, I know the ones in Manila, I mean in Philippines and in Pakistan and others, they do create these kind of self-organized solidarity networks. I think solidarity works. Solidarity network is one of the very concrete examples that a lot of our comrades does. Also in Turkey, during the earthquake, that was the time when these are generally the times that our comrades become even more visible because people see them, how they work, how they create these solidarity networks. During COVID, that was the same as well. Like people created neighborhood solidarity committees and others. So these are the small things that have been done. The other thing about like what do other currents say? Well, it is a new process, so it was. I don't think there's been a lot of places that this has been discussed. But I was in Brussels recently. There was another eco-socialist conference like yours. And that was really interesting for me because exactly what you say happened there. Like there was a person from more like this Extinction Rebellion, current. I wouldn't say that she was not representing that, but there's another collective in Portugal, based in Portugal, that I don't exactly know the name now, but they have a manifesto as well. It's something called All in One, or I will check what it is. But there was a discussion between our manifesto and theirs, and for example, about urgency issue, like what we mean about urgency and what some of the tendencies, this more anarcho tendencies mean about urgency can be different. Some others think that we should not have used degrowth. Degrowth is kind of stepping back, and how do you say, is like accepting failure kind of attitude. But the discussion continues, and I am also very much interested in having more of, like having different currents and discussing with other currents. And the other one, I mean, I will leave the ISO to you, of course. I'm a member of the Dutch section. But these, if I understood rightly, this thing of, I mean, Trotskyists are generally the troublemakers, I would say, but in a good way. Because I think, I mean, for me, for example, wherever I am, I mean, it's not that I didn't become Trotskyist because I read, I mean, of course I read Trotsky later, after, but like, it was mainly when I was, for example, working in a broader party in Turkey, and there were the people who were like, who were more in favor of the Kurdish, I mean, they were, pro-Kurdish movement, they were the feminists, they were the ecologists, and then I felt myself closer to them, and after that, of course, the process continues. But it is like what I am feeling responsible or is that whenever I am in a board of a group or in a campaign, it is, as you said, like making the place democratic. And that is not something that everybody is happy about, especially the people who have much more power in a place. So for a lot of people that could be a problem, like because you would be the ones who would be complaining about who takes the word more, or whether minutes are written rightly, or whether the work is collectivized enoughly. I would just say that.
Yeah, I agree. But first of all, the idea of the Fourth International and the ISO is to bring together different currents and to discuss together how to go forward together. You read I think it was from the 80s where the Fourth International said, we are not calling ourselves Trotskyists. We will work together with other currents. We will work, we will open us to other people who think the same, but we have two demands. Inner democracy within the organization and the right for minorities to build factions. If you have that, it's fine. So, for example, I'm not a Trotskyist. I came to the ISO in the 90s when it was the Vereinigte Sozialistische Partei, and then left when it split up into organizations and returned when they came back together. I'm not a Leninist. I think the Leninist party structure is wrong, and we need a structure that is built from the bottom and is self-organized and is a mass party, and so on and so forth. And that's differences within the fourth. I think I'm in the minority in the ISO. I'm not sure how it is in the fourth, in the IC, but in the International Committee. But there are many comrades there who see themselves as Trotskyists because they come from the Trotskyist tradition and so on and so forth. But our biggest member, the biggest section, the Philippines, it's a former Maoist organization.
But a former.
A former Maoist organization. Yeah.
They broke with the Maoists.
Yeah, they broke with Maoist, but they are not Trotskyists. I think. Maybe they are, but I don't think they are. But okay. So there are some annoying Trotskyist organizations. They are very. They have the clear program, and this definite program is what is leading them. And everyone who disagrees is no true revolutionary. What I read from Trotsky, I'm not so sure if they really understood Trotsky, but who am I to judge? I'm not a Trotskyist. I know that my comrades in the ISO are not that. Some of them are, but not so this hardcore annoying. So I think the allowance of democracy and of minority support is what differentiates us. But the need to work together, all socialist currents, not only socialist currents, but all currents, all people who work for an emancipation, for a change of the system we are living in, has to work together, has to come together and try to make it happen. And that's not easy. So I don't care where you are organized as long as you are. And nearly. Okay.
Do you want to reflect on others?
I think you said it all.
I took a note that Ole is not Leninist and not Trotskyist. I'm gonna go to the leadership.
I told it in the Bureau meeting.
Now it's on the
I told it in the school, in the
Yes.
Ökosozialistische school, and when Penny had said, I'm a Leninist, goddamn. And I said, I'm not a Leninist. And then she was very disappointed.
Okay. Now we have 3 more contributions there.
First, you in the back.
I want to tell you, I have the same experience. There's a right time if I come to ISO, the people told me, you are not Trotskyists, why you go to Trotsky organization? This organization is not pro-Trotsky's organization, but the form of organization is Trotsky's organization. The Trotsky's organization since 1780, they are every time part and fraction in bourgeois organization, in social movement organization, and they want to be a left fraction of SPD's left party and so on. And it is this form of party organization. It is not revolutionary. It is not for me the Communist Party. I am communist. You can tell me Leninist, but I'm from Lucas Gramsci, Antonio Gabriela section. But the form of this organization, they changed never. No things in the society. Because it is not revolutionary. The revolutionary organization, they need revolutionary politics. And the revolutionary politics is not to be a part of bourgeois democratic party or left bourgeois party, but you have to bring a revolutionary politics to people, to working class. The Trotsky's people, they did it. Maybe in France, the anti-capitalist party is a little bit better, but in Germany, maybe 100 people remember of the Trotskys, and the most of them are remember at the same time in the left party. The left party is, for me, Tarkowski told SPD is a revolutionary party, was not no revolution after the party. The left party is weder revolutionary nor revolutionary after the party. It is the problem of Trotsky's organization too. And because of them, I was never a member of Trotsky's organization. And in the future, and that.
I'd like to shift the debate from who is really revolutionary. Quite frankly, I have zero interest in that debate. I want to pick up the term that Maral used, alienation, speaking about working class people in rich countries. The country I'm living now in, which is Canada, which is known for its beautiful landscapes, and not so well known, but important as a big oil producer. My paycheck comes out of the province of Alberta, which is known for beautiful landscapes and the Alberta tar sands. And every summer, Canada, like all, same in Russia, everywhere where they still have significant forests, there's forest fires that in Central Europe nobody can imagine. And a few years ago, the center of the Alberta tar sands, a city about 50,000 people, Fort St. John, burned down. The whole city burned down. There was no more city. It was rebuilt. They managed to get the people out, so there were no casualties, but the city was gone. And you think, well, if that happens, something clicks with people. Comes the next provincial election, there is no political party opposed to getting that oil out. There is just one, the Social Democrats, that are 100% to get the oil out, and another one, conservative, which is 150% in favor of oil extraction. And in the next election, in that city, in the process of being rebuilt, went up from, I'm not exactly sure, maybe 70 to 90% for the conservatives. So my question here is, are there people where the alienation has gone so far that it becomes kind of suicidal? And you mentioned we need successes, but in a place like that, I have no, and the town I'm living in, we have the pipeline going through town, and every summer for weeks you smell the fire in the air. But when they decided to triple the pipeline capacity, and now they want even more because somebody has to deliver, as we all know, people are gung-ho. And we had a Fridays for Future group in the town. We were like, people by and large just ignored us. Nobody got aggressive. But as soon as the pipeline is expanded, people, and it's not a permanent job, right? It's 2 years of work and it's well paid, but after 2 years there's more pipeline, you can make a living that way. There is no opposition to that. And quite frankly, I'm totally helpless how to cope with that situation. And it's decent people, like everyday conversations with them are nice. Actually, often nicer than with left people. But the denialism has reached the level that makes me speechless. And I would be grateful for any kind of idea how to cope with situations like that. Because if we can convince a significant share of people who are like that, they just keep on going the way the world has been going for much too long, and there's no way of stopping that. And from that sense, I can see the helpless organizing that Extinction Rebellion did, or what was it, Last Generation. I empathize with that, but I also see it as a sign of helplessness. And I share that helplessness.
I would like to come back to the Eco-Socialist Manifesto in itself. So my question to you is, what do you see is the role of the state? Because you didn't speak any word about the state. The idea to decentralize as much as possible and to coordinate as much as necessary is very vague. Because, yes, first of all, you need investment, you need money in order to strengthen renewable energy, strengthen organic farming, and all things like that. So you need funds, you even need a bureaucracy, you need a lot of money for research and R&D, research and development, to create technologies that do not harm the environment. That is very simple, and for that you need a state, and you need state power. The idea that everything is self-organized is, in my view, totally hopeless. You need state power and socialization of a strategic means of production and so on. So maybe there is something about this in the manifesto, but in what you told to us, I mean, I'm an eco-socialist since 1980. Yes, I was also in the Fourth International and a member of the Politburo of the GIM. And our current, we split, we went to the Greens, there was a huge eco-socialist current. I learned quite a lot about eco-socialism from that. And the Fourth International is glad that 30 years later, in 2003 or something, as I thought, you call yourself eco-socialist. At my time in the 80s, nobody from the GIM wanted anything to know and to have to do with eco-socialism.
Then you have the medal. Right.
Yes,
So,
I have a medal of honor.
yes. So,
A lot of them are Germany.
yeah, a lot of German things. So first of all, one sentence to revolutionary parties on the left. I am in the German left party, and I'm in the leadership of the Darmstadt Kreisverband. I have no idea what Kreisverband is. A local organization. Doesn't matter. And always when I represent myself to be voted, to vote on if I go to leadership or not, I tell them, okay, I'm member of the ISO, I'm member of the Fourth International, and so on and so forth. Why I think that every revolutionary in Germany has applied to join the ranks of the Linke and to form the Linke because it's the only mass organization that has an impact on the people and can reach out to the people. And yes, there are some reformists. Yes, there are some social democrats. But there are also revolutionaries. And we need, no, it's not enough. It's not enough, and so on and so forth. But we need the people to change their mind. And this is connected to what you told. How can we get this mind rot, this neoliberal mind rot out of the brains of the people? My colleagues at the Telekom, they say, yeah, nothing you can do, just live our best lives, I have 3 cars, and so on and so forth. They know on a theoretical level about the ecological disaster. And that they are engineers. They are not, they have studied, they have well-paid jobs and so on. They don't have, but the intellectual, the abstract level knowing of the climate disaster is not enough. Many of them identify themselves with their jobs, with their corporation, with the company, and not with the colleagues. We had a strike now for better work conditions at the Telekom, and not even half of the union members went to the streets. That's the issue we are talking about. So the issue is we have to raise the consciousness of the people about where is the true enemy. The enemy is not the guy in the street who are begging for some money. It's not the guy who is homeless. It's not the guy who gets Bürgergeld. But it's the capital factor. And this class consciousness can only be risen when you can reach to people, when you have some possibilities to reach the people, to present an alternative, present other thoughts, in my opinion. I'm not sure if I'm right, but that's what I think. And therefore, and to be quite honest, it's maybe, no, I'm pretty sure I'm in the minority in the ISO when I say it's the plight of every revolutionary to go to the left in Germany. The half of us are not in the left and see it like you. Let's say we need a revolutionary party to bring it forward, but okay, that's differences. And within a democratic organization, it's fine to have differences, and it's fine to discuss them. But the question how to overthrow the brain rot, that's very difficult, especially in the north. In the south, it's easy. It's really easy. When you are in the camps of the homeless and so on and so forth, it's pretty easy. They know who is the enemy. But when you have good settled bourgeois, well, it's difficult. The role of the state. You need money and investment to change the system. Yeah, the state doesn't have, in the capitalist society, the capitalist state has no incentive of changing the capitalist system. You have You have to push them to change. You can only do it if you do it on the road, on the streets, with demonstrations, with manifestations, with a movement. And therefore you need the self-organization to get this push. And in the IT where I work, for the self-organization, there's the IT companies, many of the IT companies start to self-organize within the companies. They tell their employees, this is our goal, please try to reach it as self-organized teams. We don't tell you how, what to do, that's your money, do it. Self-organizing works if you have someone who tells you where you want to go. And the difference is we want the people to tell the people themselves to discuss where do we want to go. And yes, it's not easy. Nobody said it's an easy task. But
I'll give a few, just how do I say, like 2 cents, my 2 cents on a few topics. The one the discussion in Canada and it's again a quote, but I think it tells a lot. That it's also being referred to. I think Frederick Jameson said it, but some people say it's Zizek. Can't be everybody. But that it's easier to think about the end of the world now than to think about the end of capitalism. And it is kind of like what you told me, just brought that to my mind as well. And it was, and now it's even more, because, it is very easy to see the end of the world now, even for, much more mainstream people. But that is something that we really have to, maybe underline and make that it's so absurd, that it is, people can be okay with the possibility of the end of the world, but not thinking of that there's another way possible and we can work together for that. And also there's, that's a big issue. There's a lot of the transitional, what will the workers who are in the destructive economies will do. And that should be discussed with them, of course, because there are a lot of people who are afraid, of course, of losing their jobs, in the energy sector and others, and so that is and I think Manifesto at some point brings that thing that we need to bring people from different different struggles together to discuss, because there's a lot that we can learn from each other. The pioneers in the ecological struggle with the pioneers of the labor struggle, if they come together, if they share more spaces and discuss together, then we will be able to maybe learn from together. I think that was one of the things that they say. I heard the question or the comment or the protest, I would say, of the comrade or the gentleman behind in a different way that you read it. I thought that they were more asking what is the issue of power? You can't do anything without having the state power. It's more like I would say the classical communist attitude of you can't just do little things, you have to have power to do it. But I'm sure you know better than I do what the Trotskyist method of power or reaching to power is as well, like all these transitional demands, right? Like these are the transitional demands of the night. Even some of them are still very relevant for our tradition, but that means that you would have some demands. You will push for some things, which is like opening of company records, transparency in capital, which doesn't exist at all, transparency in finance sector, you can say now, free public transport, an end to unemployment, end to precarity. These are the things that we can campaign for now, but we know that the solution, the result will not be able to be reached in this society. capitalism will not make it the books of the financiers open. You know, like in this world, you will not be able to see an end of unemployment. So these are the transitional demands that we will be pushing for. And it also says, I think that's the difference. We don't think we have all the responses. We have, we discuss these things and we have ideas. And I also, for example, these transitional demands, at some point, some of them will bring us, faced with police violence. We are aware of it. Yes, yes. If you really go for it, you will do. And it is also written here, and there it is said that of course we recognize the legitimate violence. We're not like our organizations are not pacifist organizations. But what do we mean by that? Yes, it is not totally clear, but we will see it when that comes. I think if it will be so powerful to push for those transitional demands, if we will have people behind us, if those fights will grow, then the power will be achieved. But it is taking state is not a coup d'etat. This is not a revolutionary project. That is not our revolutionary project in that sense. That was my 2 cents for that.
Thank you.
We still have time.
We still have time?
Yeah.
More questions?
Bring it more.
Well, I think Ingo, of course, know several of the things anyway, and that's the point what he's saying. This kind of totally brainwashing what happens that you call it with an attribute like suicidal. No? It's hard. The point is, I just try to catch it a little bit from the here nearby Cologne is the brown coal brown coal area, something like that. So where a lot of the fossil combustion is done, and there were strong fights. One member of the left in the parliament, Zeki Gökhan, I don't know if you know him, the former member of parliament. He was also strongly involved there, and there were even 35,000 people at Lützerath, one of the initial topics where a big demonstration was. Anyhow, the system has destroyed everything somehow. But on the way before, there were some of the processes you described. There were people from Colombia, from Pakistan, or from somewhere in the world to learn from each other how to organize, how to bring forward. Anyway, at the end, the feeling is it was not successful because it was destroyed. But maybe what we can learn from it is the question of ranking of priorities, because then stronger came in the mind of the people, of the whole society. It's not about what we see as the end of the world from the ecological point. No, then more came into the mind of the people the question of the Ukrainian war, and the majority of the people had the feeling this is more relevant for our lives, so we put the other things just far behind. Now comes the next question, what you also said in your panel. Is there maybe even an intention doing something like that as a government or something like that? I want to keep this question open, but anyway, to work on these transfers and transition of the major narratives, this is a point what we can do, and we can still focus on the importance of ecological questions, and the other thing is within this process to have these contacts and so and that's a kind of success feeling. And the last sentence to add for you, in the ISO, I'm not member of the ISO, but an example, one of the members, Thies Gleis, he is in the same time, he's member of the party. What is Parteivorstand? What the fuck? Party?
No. He's in the leadership of
in the leadership of our party, and there's also a current which is called AKL, anti-capitalistic left. So this is not the majority of the left, but it's to say the party is only organized or driven by mainly social democrats. I don't know, and the question is, there is a kind of mass factor in multiplication to the people. What will you do when you only focus on the few revolutionary people? I don't know, that's not so easy.
This is not my point. This is not my point.
Any other?
Maybe coming on this topic, how to engage with people. Don't want to put you down, Ole. Probably I said it myself very often too in your response. You said we have to raise consciousness. And that's a kind of difficult but also revealing. I think it's revealing because that's how most of us on the left think. But being working class and having seen actually existing communism in East Germany, I can say first, and that was one of the main reasons the whole thing fell apart, because there were always the party people saying, you're a bit backward worker, we raise your consciousness. And immediately you get this response, fuck you, guy. And now we live in a perverted, dare I say, situation where the people who bring up this, articulate the sentiment, I can speak for myself, are all these neo-Nazi parties, whether it's the supporters of Trump or the AfD in Germany. They're all about freedom. And I think that's something we on the left have lost. And I understand it's difficult. If eco-socialist dictatorship would work, I'd be all in favor. I would tell these people in Fort St. John, your job is gone, goodbye, find something else. Or we find something for you, you'll be a gardener from now on. But it doesn't work that way. So we're facing a difficult situation, I'm afraid. We have to talk to people who say things we do not like to hear. But if you're open to it, you feel there are, like in this claim for freedom, and in Canada there was a freedom convoy, I don't know if you followed that. There was some big money poured in and they occupied downtown Ottawa, actually the government. It was a show of force by, they didn't have arms, but they had these big trucks. So it was kind of shifting the political balance quite a bit. But that they used the term freedom, I'm a bit too young for that, but in the 60s, freedom was a word of the left, right? There was women's liberation and freedom movements, and that's something we lost, and I think we have to find ways, because apparently there is a taste for freedom, and engaging with people who use their freedom to say things that we 100% disagree with. But I think that's kind of the challenge that we are facing. And it's demanding, sometimes kind of, I just want you to shut up, I can't listen to this bullshit. But I think we have to learn that.
So, when I started becoming politically active, I went to Lützerath, where we tried to stop lignite mining in this region. And so I have a few thoughts on what we have been discussing now. I feel that many of the problems that we face in terms of the climate crisis and in terms of how economy and social participation is organized in our society comes from like deeply authoritarian top-down organizing. So I feel that at the core, our answer to that must be self-organization. It must be like empowering people to take part in discussing what the solution needs to look like and to empower themselves to take action. I feel like in Lützerath we've really been trying to do this and to like involve people in the struggle, people who have been like forcibly removed out of their homes, who lost their houses to the brown coal, to the lignite mining process, and like also the climate justice movement in Germany has been at their I don't know how to say, high point at their summit in like some years ago, and Lützerath maybe was one of the biggest crystallization points after also another lignite, anti-lignite mining struggle that came before. And somehow, I would say we lost that fight. We did win, in a sense, the reform that many years in the future lignite mining should be stopped, but in terms of climate politics, it's so late that the catastrophe will have been set to like go forward. In terms of climate politics, it's a loss, but it's the best we could get with the strength that we had back then. And what I'm seeing right now is the fossil fuel backlash with all the gas infrastructure that's being built, and also the way with like fracking that is maybe even more catastrophic than lignite mining that would be done in Germany. So in terms of climate politics, I'm really struggling to see what kind of climate politics we can do right now with the power that we have as progressive, emancipatory, revolutionary movements, because even when we were at our height, we couldn't really like get any meaningful reforms that would just even slow down the catastrophe from progressing, like let alone stop it. So right now, the state project in Germany is moving like towards a great militarization and is even becoming more authoritarian than before. Back then in Lützerath we had this window for climate politics with the Green Party who would say on paper, yeah, we are in favor of it, and we could pressure them. We don't even have this right now. So where am I saying all this? I'm really wondering how we can do climate politics in our everyday political life, or what kind of climate political goals we should strive toward, because I have a really hard time seeing how we can achieve these kind of reforms and how we can grow as a movement. Like looking back, I still think Lützerath was a success in terms of like raising political awareness, in terms of teaching people self-organizational skills, in terms of making people believe that they can fight for a better world. But in terms of the material gains, or in terms of the like outcome, climate political outcome, it's not looking too good for us. And it's even looking darker today than it was 5 years ago. So I don't want to end this like workshop on such a dark note, but I have these questions.
Yeah, if I may.
Please.
Yeah. But I was feeling like everything you said before that, but for me, who was not in that struggle, is already a lot of achievement. And I'm not doing that, not saying it for propaganda reasons, but the fact that that you say you created that kind of awareness, you created that organization, and you are here now with that experience. For me, it doesn't. How do you say it? It doesn't demoralize me. In fact, I'm happy to hear it. It is because I think sometimes the difference between some other political currents, I'm not going to name names, and I maybe will not be even able to do it, is that, yes, probably, I don't think in my lifetime I'll see like huge political changes, or a revolution. But I do know that, the things that I'm doing now is adding to the political, power of the oppressed people, and it's kind of, it's a building up on top of each other. So it is very easy, I think, to be very demoralized when something doesn't end or doesn't give like the result that you want to, or when you go, like you see now, I don't know the concrete situation here, but if you say that it's in a worse position now than 5 years ago, but probably in 50 years, that 5 years might be also that 5 years, and then things might change as well. It's a bit hard when you're inside inside the campaign itself and you lose something. I mean, anti-war movements, we've been in anti-war movements for ages. Did we be able to stop the movements, the war? No. Like, I became political active in the Iraq War. Iraq War happened and, for ages, and then Afghanistan and Iran. But I think we do learn from these things and we get empowered and, I'm more in the Gramscian, what's that, pessimism of the intellect and optimism of the will quote. Yes, these experiences will make us pessimists because we know these experiences, but we have the will, and that will is, gives us this political optimism.
Yeah. To add something, but in my political career I had one victory. I started from a leftist family, blah blah blah, and so on. I started as a teenager in the campaign against the nuclear power in Germany in the 80s. Well, we succeeded until now. No, they want to. Someone wants to bring it back here. But no, I think the lessons the people learn in the political struggle, also when my comrades go on strike for better wages, they are always very sad about the results because the results are not very good. Or struggles in Lützerath, or the G7 movement, and so on, Blockupy, and so on. We had so many defeats. But we are learning, and there's always some people who continue the fight, continue the struggle, go forward. And, well, what else should I do? I mean, it's only, we have to change the system to have a livable life. So, okay, I think I have to do it.
Well, one comment on consciousness issue, because I wouldn't necessarily use, what did you say? We have to raise the consciousness, right? And the comment there commented on that. Like I wouldn't use that, but it's not because I wouldn't necessarily agree with that, but I would think that it is a very top-down kind of way to approach the issue because of the history of it. But, I mean, there's also in the feminist tradition, consciousness-raising groups was a way of self-organizing. Like, I would say we, but I was not living in the 70s, but there was that consciousness-raising groups. We were, people used that term, and it was more like a horizontal thing, and it was like a top-down thing. So if we could at some point, and we're not doing it now, I think, a lot of younger generation people find it quite like a top-down thing because of its history when we talk about raising consciousness. But if it could be reformulated and reappropriated as like a more like a horizontal thing, I think we can't escape from it because it's like we are not anti-intellectualism is not necessarily it should not be our methodology as well. We should all kind of increase our consciousness, but maybe we can talk about do it more horizontally rather than thinking it up top down.
Just one sentence. When I talk about consciousness raising, I never think about it horizontally, because every time a colleague of mine goes to his first strike, he raises his own consciousness.
So you never think about vertical?
No,
you think
never.
about horizontal, yes, I know.
But I'm okay, there was some.
Good point. Just only one note. Maybe a little bit diffuse positive, but we remember the hard times before the last election, and that was so obvious, this right movement, and I don't want to make a person cult out of it, but not what. Heide was an example, so she multiplied somehow. Does not mean it must not be a person or something, but there was a kind of also some horizontal, diffuse feeling in many people. We have to do something against this right things, and there were 1.5 years ago were many demonstrations in the cities against the right, and so yes. It can be very hard to say what came out of the new. Yeah, but it was something, and it is still somehow possible.
Okay.
So, while closing up, right?
Yes.
As we talked about consciousness raising as well, I will do a little bit of propaganda of the institute that I work at, the Political Education Center of the Fourth International. So you can imagine that we're trying to do our best in raising the consciousness of our activists and comrades. A few words about it, maybe some of you know, but it has been founded 40 years ago, more than 40 years ago, 1982, in Amsterdam. And we're organizing eco-socialist schools twice a year, one youth school in summer in August, which is open for people from 17 to 30, Wakely, whoever, kind of normative youth that you can think of. And the winter one, which Ole also came, last year maybe, or yes. So the summer one is for 2 weeks, the winter one is for 3 weeks, and it's open for all walks of life, for all ages. And we have, 3 weeks of formation, every day one topic. It's also self-organized. We live in the building, we cook together, we clean together, every day we discuss one topic. It starts theoretically, then it goes to other issues. You can check the website of, if I can write something there, I don't know. International, iire.org. I can write with this. There's no marker, but it is iire.org. You can imagine what that's for. And I have leaflets here. Apart from these two schools, we organize Fourth International's biannual LGBTQI seminar and a women's seminar, and these are all also organized together with the Fourth International's respective commissions, like the Women's Commission, LGBTQI Commission. And we also host all the international political meetings of the Fourth International, the International Committee, the Bureau meetings and others. We publish books. When you go to the site you can see them. We don't get any funding from any state or any organization, even from any kind of progressive organization. We do commercial work. We also rent out the space when we don't have the schools and the seminars, and we get donations from people. And most of them are not members of the Fourth International, and that's why they are looking for a place to give their money to support the progressive fight. So, if you or any of the people around you might fall into that category that doesn't have a place to pay dues, they are very welcome to support us. And I have leaflets here. I'll leave them here. If you're interested, please take some, and you can always also reach us through the website. And thanks for the invitation.
If I may add,
yes, please do
3
so.
sentences to the IRI. One, it says they have a very great bibliothèque.
Yes.
Many books from comrades who passed their books to the institute, and it's near the IISG, where all the literature of the communist Germans who had to flee from the Nazis are, and where I think also a big part of the Communist International literature is hosted. It's an institute of the Amsterdam University. So if you want to study some history, that's also a great place to be.
And we also have space to, I mean, you can stay in the institute as well if you write to us. We have rooms, so you can visit both of the institutes. Mandel's archives are there, Marx and Engels' archives are there, Emma Goldman's archives are there. Not in our institute, but the
In the
institute.
IISG.
Yeah, I did my PhD there, so. So yes, come visit us. These are the leaflets. I have some cards from old times, or emails if you want to send an email. Feel free to take one.
And if someone is interested in more information about the ISO, the German section of the Fourth International, here is a contact list where you can give us your contact details and we can add you to the mailing list. Thank you very much.
Thank you.